Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar, and tonight I'm up late playing one of my favorite games, ladies and gentlemen. If you don't know what that is, it's actually Doom. I think all of us have pretty much played Doom. I've actually covered a lot of Doom on my channel, whether I be looking at, wild modifications where, again, a lot of effort has been put into not just storytelling, ARGs, but just pushing a video game engine to its absolute limits. I've looked at weird cyberpunk mods for this. I've looked at even situations where you can ray trace Doom and make it look pretty damn good by today's standards using some pretty impressive graphical technology. But of course, it's not just that. There's actual games that I really enjoy, like Divine Frequency, which is one of the best sort of like horror games, not even released yet, on Doom. In fact, one of my favorite little shooters is Beyond Sunset, another game that is built off of Doom's source port engine. Now, the way that Doom actually functions is that there's a lot of, communities out there. There's a lot of open source projects. So this is where the actual drama comes in, ladies and gentlemen. One of the most popular projects, GZDoom, is effectively all but dead. Why? Because of a few lines, the few code lines, a few piece of code snippets that killed a pretty big project. Today, it's an entire story of hubris, the ability of just not simply taking an L, which leads to just a whole litany of insane drama. So of course, ladies and gentlemen, ZDoom, for anybody that doesn't know, is one of the primary source ports, right? And the reason why ZDoom is important is it serves as a bedrock for a lot of these projects like GZDoom and LZDoom. Which again, these are projects that have sort of come as successor projects. They've implemented more features like access to other graphical APIs. This is, by the way, the best way to play Doom. Typically, you download or purchase Doom, get your WAD file, put it into these source ports, and you're just basically exposed to some pretty badass ways to up your Doom experience, right? So how did one of the most popular Doom source projects effectively die, ladies and gentlemen? Well, for instance, let's look at the actual GitHub page for GZDoom. Now, this is going to be where you're going to read some pretty epic arguments between the actual people behind Doom. So the light way to put it, ladies and gentlemen, is due to some disagreements, some recent, some tolerated for close to 2 decades. Yes, GZDoom has been a project that's been in the works since 2005. With how collaboration should work, we decided the best course of action was to just fork the project. Now, in open source terms, that basically means you take a project that exists, you create a new branch, and people can either work on the original project or just move to the new branch and work there. I don't want to see the GZDoom legacy die, as do most of us, hence why I think the best thing to do is continue development through a fork, while introducing a different developer model that highly favors transparent collaboration between multiple people. So one of the minds behind GZDoom, some could consider him to be one of the basic, fathers of GZDoom, the original sort of like developer, was a guy known as Graf Zoll. Now, Graf is the guy that basically went missing for quite a fair bit. He was gone for about a year until he just magically came back and pushed some pretty dog shit code. So inside the GitHub repository for GZDoom, this is ground zero for the massive Doom drama. So he makes a commit 584 AF50. Tweaked launcher window theme, auto detection of dark mode. The Linux solution was provided by ChatGPT and needs to be reviewed before being deployed. Default the system preset instead of light theme. Dark theme is mostly the Z widget default. Now, okay, you might be wondering, what's the controversy here? Well, if you can't see the ChatGPT highlighted, that, ladies and gentlemen, is the problem. So I'm going to read some of this code here real quick to show you what's going on. So obviously inside the code, one of the big changes, as you can see in green, is a boolean, which is true and false, obviously, is dark mode. So again, you can see that the way the code is commented, this seems eerily similar to how ChatGPT or open source LLMs typically function when coding. Now, I know that I've shown you guys how people code on LLMs, people use coding LLMs to actually assist them. This is something that's pretty prevalent throughout the industry. I think somewhere like Microsoft said that, I think it's like, 30% of their company is run by vibe coders, which kind of explains how dog shit some of the most recent Windows 11 updates are, which we will talk about, but not today. So obviously this has some vibe code, this has that tinge of vibe codedness to it, right? And obviously, people were looking at this and going, okay, first off, we don't like the AI being used. And second of all, it's not even that big of a thing. You could have looked up how to identify dark mode. So again, furthermore, you look into it, bool is dark mode. And of course, this is what ChatGPT told me for detecting dark mode on Linux. So obviously the contributors in this situation are like, why the fuck do we think it's okay? It's both untested, doesn't even compile, and the code is sourced from stolen, scraped code that we have no way of verifying is compatible with the GPL. Now, anybody that doesn't know what the goddamn GPL is, remember, anytime you use scraped code, you want to make sure that when you're publishing your project, you typically don't have copyrighted code into it, which is obviously a pretty big issue when it comes to things like ChatGPT or Copilot or any of those, coding LLMs that you're using, right? So again, the question some people ask is, Copilot, for instance, cannot rely upon the concept of fair dealing and fair use. Then it must surely have obtained the permission of all copyright holders. And that's where the case becomes murkier. According to GitHub's terms of services, by storing your code remotely using their service, you grant GitHub certain rights, including this license includes the rights to do things like copy it to our database, make backups, show it to you and other users, parse it in a search index, and otherwise analyze it on our servers. So again, the idea is for some people who don't feel that, the AI is necessarily following the copyrights properly, this is all something that is obviously a severe issue for people who are writing this project. And it's one of the reasons why in certain open source projects, like they'll basically want you to ensure you're not using LLM. So a lot of these projects don't get basically thrown into legal liability issues, when shit hits the fan. If there is AI used code found, usually that should try and shift over to the person who's offending in the first place. So obviously that's where the initial sort of drama occurred. Now, obviously, the thing is, it wouldn't be that big of a deal had Graph not decided to just double down and speak adversity in the face of, or just speak in the face of adversity. So he types in, it did pass the CI, so it surely did compile. Otherwise, it would have disabled it again. As for the AI, I hate to be blunt, fuck it. Everybody's using AI for boilerplate code these days. And those who act as unreasonable as you did here will lose out in the end and be ridiculed. I surely have my reservations about using AI, but this here is just superficial checks of system configuration settings. So again, obviously, there's a lot of people that can sit there and go, yeah, maybe he's right. But overwhelmingly, there's a lot of, bro, why? Okay, first off, for the caliber of people working on a project like this, what Graph was doing was not something that required a fucking Ivy League education to figure out how to detect things like dark mode under an operating system, right? So he used AI, LLMs, tried to make his life easier, and ultimately, everyone over here just starts going at it. For instance, the guys go, the fact that you feel the need to lie directly to me is hilarious and outright childish. To where he shows a failed compilation run of this LLM, showing that even the LLM, when it first started pushing it out, wasn't necessarily kosher and nothing was actually working properly. So obviously, even, Graph goes, yeah, it failed. Does it matter? The fix immediately followed. So again, don't tell me you don't make mistakes. I would never, ever use code slop generated by AI for anything, even boilerplate, even if it was partially for correcting my code with AI assistance. I had to deal with AI assisted PRs in another project, and it's fucking unfun to get inundated by bug reports taking my precious time, which is actually not fucking wrong. If you ever code with an AI, there's a lot of people, I think the current joke is like, let the AI work on Friday all the way through the weekend so I can come back on Monday and spend my fucking hours trying to fix the mistakes the AI made. So obviously Graph was like, listen, the fucking code is gone. I excised the function from the repo, but don't think this will solve the AI problem. I know far too many developers that swear by AI tools and would not develop without them anymore. And he's absolutely true here, man. There's tons of developers, people that work for companies like Microsoft, Amazon, so on and so forth. I think most of the big tech companies in San Francisco typically just tell you use the AIs, because if you don't use the AIs, you're not being efficient enough. And again, obviously, look, depending on what your view is on artificial intelligence, it's not something that's ever really going to go away. But again, what what happened in this situation, you didn't even really need ChatGPT for. So again, the problem is that Graph left for like a year. He just went fucking MIA. And then he comes back with AI code. It's not even like he was active the whole year. And then he's like, all right, I got a little lazy. Let me just use a local AI or something, or just ChatGPT. No, this is just a guy went missing, comes back with AI slop, and everyone else is looking at it going, bro, what's wrong with you? And obviously people who are like, listen, every company, whether we want it or not, has shoved it into our workflow. It's really easy to accuse people of using AI in their daily lives when they literally cannot get away with it because every other dumbass company has implemented it. And that's pretty true. I understand if you don't want to do that, but that just makes you a shitty developer. And that's just what it is. Let the people who actually want to work on this thing work on it. So obviously, listen, at this point, you know, to be fair with you, right? Like, this is where I'm just going to sit over here and think for a second, right? Like, one user comes in. On top of this, you attempted to erase the commit from the repo, and the comments here via force pushing. What kind of power tripping Orwellian bullshit is this? I think there's nothing to salvage here after this pathetic attempt. All bridges have been burned after this. I will only maybe contribute to Z Music after this, but I'm pretty sure everyone that contributed here will not contribute here anymore after what you just did. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, after a few lines, literally a few lines, I'm not even joking here, you can count them yourselves, these lines alone led to the death of a project. You know, a little bit of ChatGPT usage led to such severe backlash that the project has basically been abandoned and forked over to something else. And that's literally at the wishes of Graph. So obviously, look, the community over here said you pushed untested code. Leaving a note for people to test later is ridiculous. Now that it's in the code base, it'll be forgotten about. Use of an LLM to write your code for you likely violates the GPL. So again, to go down over here, right, we're a team. Doing stuff like this shows how little you respect your peers. I understand this is your project and you can do whatever you like, but instead of pushing directly, open PRs and wait for a maintainer to act them. This would set a good example. And again, you know, obviously Graph is like, listen, fuck you guys. Feel free to fork the project. And you know what they did? They forked the project. Now, you could probably read on other Doom mods, for instance, they kind of talk about it. Yeah, there's controversy around GZDoom. But of course, obviously, they start to say, listen, the next big project comes out. And what they said over here was pretty eye-opening. For a while now, we've been using dev builds of GZDoom, the next version that was supposed to come out. That's still the plan for something new called UZDoom. Now, while they say GZDoom is basically dead, again, all because of this, yes, the few lines of AI that you're seeing over here basically was the tipping point for the destruction of effectively one of, I guess you could say, Doom's cultural institutions. And so at this point, you know, down the road, literally a few days ago, UZDoom had started to be forked. People had forked GZDoom into a project called UZDoom. And this is where, again, the actual coding was much more democratic. For the initial group of us that had left and basically been keeping the engine alive, the one-year Graph was mostly MIA. We've been operating on a collaboration-centric basis. As a result, UZDoom gets rid of the one-man decides everything development model. Everyone has to make pull requests that must be peer-reviewed thoroughly. And yeah, absolutely. I think if you're doing any form of open source development, probably should make it as democratic as you can instead of having like the benevolent dictatorship that only works for certain projects, okay? Linux. But anyways, to go beyond it, obviously this is not the only bit of drama Graph was in. This didn't just come out of nowhere. For instance, Graph was a pretty highly controversial figure in regards to other projects. So 4 years ago, there was a little project that came out by the name of, well, this came out more than 4 years ago, but back in 2017, a WAD came out by the name of Lilith PK3. Now, if you're looking at these screenshots, it looks corrupted as fuck. And the reason why it's corrupted was because this mod actually took advantage of bugs in the source port engine to produce these incredibly garbled but enticing visuals. So there's a good post from 4 years ago on r/hobby drama where they talked about how a Doom mod angered an arrogant developer and nearly killed the game's most popular port, which was GZDoom at the time. So basically, Anatok released a mod known as Lilith PK3, 12 maps with, again, that glitched level aesthetic. Imagine pulling out a cartridge from your NES or your Game Boy Color and just watching the game glitch up with all the sound going all fucking crazy on you. That was basically the idea, I guess you could say, of this mod. So this is a pretty divisive mod. Either people considered it to be art, or some people considered it to just be complete trash. The thing is, ultimately, this was one award that this is actually something that it won. Now, because the mod relied on bugs, it wasn't actually possible to run on anything that wasn't ZDoom version 2.8.1, because that was the version where the bugs were being abused. So obviously, listen, people who weren't, even ZDoom, but people, who were GZDoom, for instance, or the other source ports, didn't want to deal with any of this nonsense. And specifically, one user, as you can imagine, Graph, didn't exactly enjoy this mod. Now, this mod was one of those mods that won the infamous sort of CACO awards, which, for anybody that doesn't know, this is like the Oscars of Doom modding. Yeah, we're getting that deep into the internet. So on Doom World, since the year of 2004, there have been CAC awards. So again, if you want to just download the certain mods that the community has highlighted as, key pieces of art, you can right here. And obviously, yes, Lilith PK3 won the CAC award. And because it won a CAC award, one member, that GraphZol, was actually fucking pissed off. Now, GraphZol was not the most upstanding member of the Doom community. While his contributions to GZDoom were significant, he was known for being a pompous, elitist snob. In 2010, he pulled the plug on GZDoom development over an argument about video card compatibility. This didn't last. Fortunately, following this incident, mirrors were quickly made available. A mod that couldn't run on GZDoom, Lilith may as well have been an insult to his family name. On the ZDoom forums, he called Lilith the R... Oh my god. On Doom World, he upvoted negative reviews for Lilith while downvoting positive reviews, allegedly even using sock puppets to this end. Predictably, he was furious that Lilith earned a CAC award. He wrote the CAC awards off as a crony award show, not unlike the Oscars, and was upset that one of his preferred mods was relegated to the runner-up section. So again, the other members on the Doom World forums mocked him for this outburst, and it earned him the title of Salty Member. You could live your whole life not knowing the most obscure fucking internet beef, but would that really be a fun? Like, come on now. This is just so goofy. Later that December, Rachel made the post about a possibility she was worried about, that Graph would quit developing for GZDoom over this win. Firstly, she was bothered that Lilith had received the first mention in the CAC awards, as she suspected it to be a move made simply to piss Graph off. Not that she was on his side, she felt that stirring him up was unproductive at best. The real reason she made the post was this: 3 days after the title of Salty Member was bestowed upon him, Graph vanished. His account showed activity, if only to check on things. Now, Rachel was unable to get a hold of him, but she then decided to release without his authorization. So in the event that Graph really just took his ball and went away, Doom players would have a secure version to use. Basically, it also turned out in the end that Graph wasn't even on the forums because he decided to go out and touch fucking grass. And he went on a vacation. Now, you might think that Graph should have told the team that he was out for the holidays, but throughout development, he had very little active communication with each other. So it shouldn't have mattered to anyone involved whether they left on vacation or not. Following the CAC Award incident, he got back to working on GZDoom. And of course, to this day, Lilith is the mod that some people notice as the mod that made this guy mad. So obviously, look, at the end of the day, I really don't think this is... The reason I'm talking about it is because, listen, I love video games, I love Doom, I love open source shit. And sometimes there is so much beef that happens in this universe, in this world in this side of the internet, that the reason I want to talk about it is just because it's interesting to see just arguments and warfare happen on, well, seemingly pretty mundane things. Now look, GZDoom is kind of an institution, and to see it die is insane, right? Like, this is one of the... I've been using GZDoom since before I even uploaded videos on my channel here. So ultimately, look, to see it die and be replaced by something else because literally 6-7 lines were spit out by ChatGPT, pushed into an actual open source project, rightfully pissing off the other contributors. And again, all Graph really had to do was go, man, I'm really sorry, guys. Fucking, I'm out of here. But instead, this turned into a whole pissing match between, again, nerds on the internet. And this pissing match effectively led to the death of one of the most popular source ports of Doom, leading to the rise, I guess, of a totally different source port, UZDoom. Now, of course, ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mutahar, and if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you saw a side of the internet that you probably kind of wish you never did. But hopefully this video made you laugh in some ways. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, if the next time you want me to look up 10 years of Doom's most infamous WADs, some of the WADs that triggered more drama and controversy in this community, specifically towards the early 2000s, let me know in the comment section below. I really do think that, internet... I feel like at some point somebody's got to grab this together and just sort of tell this like an internet bard. The times when the internet just broke in its small little micro communities. When the internet was its most liveliest, instead of being this dead AI slop-ridden hell that we live in. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like if you dislike it, I am out.